Hi everyone, this is Killshot 99 Gaming. This is The Walking Dead Season 9 Death Predictions, plus we got some of the latest news that's out there. We're going to have some spoiler tidbits, fill in a couple of the pieces from the other night. We gave you guys some pretty extensive spoilers for episode number 1 that was sponsored by Spoiling Dead's Fanpage. Well, now we got a couple more details that's going to fill in the gap and probably give you the complete episode. Some of the storylines, how they're going to take place. We gave you kind of the bricks the other day, and now it's going to be like the mortar. It's going to connect everything, and I think it's going to make a lot of sense and help develop future storylines, and also I think lend a little credibility to some of the other theories that we have out there. So I want to thank all you guys for being here on a Wednesday night, and I see Valar super chatting in the house with a nice big hello to the 99 Army, Kill, Steph, Kells, Emmy, Sweet Tom, sponsors and patrons, and of course all the super chatters. And Valar, hopefully you enjoyed my sneak peek rendition of a Rick Grimes recast. Not the real thing, but that is posted on the Patreon site. Just a little bit of humor and a little bit of comedy, so you guys can check that out there as well. So thank you so much. Appreciate everybody being here. And this is a death prediction video, and yes, I do have someone circled, but it's not for the reason that you think. It is because there is some news about Alden, and but the news is not the death, so we'll talk about that in a little bit. Let's go through just a little bit of the tidbits that are out there with how the show is going to break down. So if you guys are not into spoilers, you might want to turn away just for a couple minutes and then check back in a couple minutes, because we are going to recap some of those, and then we're going to talk about some of the major deaths that we think are going to go down this season, and that'll be prediction based. So I know some people want a little bit of both. But let me clarify a couple of the details. So by now, hopefully you guys mostly have saw the opening minutes. So the opening minutes, really good, shows just little small amounts of information about each group and how they're doing. And then after that nice opening minutes intro, the group is basically, they're at the Capitol building. And this is what we talked about. But what's important to this is, to me, this is that moment that Ezekiel knows. He knows it's Carol, and he doesn't want to miss out on an opportunity. So let me set this up for everybody. They're basically walking around. They're trying to scavenge some stuff, and there's some walkers underneath the floor of glass, and it breaks. And Carol, of course, she's obviously going to be freaking out about this. So Carol wants to kind of help him out. It breaks through the glass, and then the others will save him. So there's this emotional scene that Ezekiel thinks he's a goner, and Carol thinks she's going to lose him. So once he's saved, that scene ends in a nice big romantic kiss. So that'll be the beginning of the relationship that we all know is going to take place. So then they're kind of on their way back, and this is, I think it was Kevin Quintana, one of my subs, who said, in one of the comments, you guys don't think I read the comments, but he's like, Kills, what happened with Ken? I thought you said it was going to go down in the beginning. Well, it is. Hold on. This is for you, Kevin. So I get called out even when the spoiler predictions are a little bit off. So apparently the group is walking back. They're heading back. And before the Ken scene happens, Ezekiel proposes to Carol. And why I think that scene is important at the Capitol building is that's where he knows. But she puts him on ice. She doesn't say yes. She doesn't say no. She just sort of leaves him hanging a little bit, so there's some curiosity. Ezekiel sort of laughs through the whole process and says he's always going to love her. So we do get a little bit of that Kang experience, where I think she's going to add some romance to The Walking Dead. So thank you so much, Angela, for that. And then the whole lovey-dovey thing is going to be called into question, because as the group's going back, now we get to see that now famous bridge. And remember the scene, this is where it shines a little bit light. We're trying to pick all these scenes of how they played out in the Comic-Con trailer. So remember the scene where they're looking over the bridge, not the one where they go and kill all the walkers, the one where it looks like they've already killed all the walkers and everybody's kind of staring over like what just happened. That's the scene we're talking about. And they needed to get away, but apparently Earl's son, Ken, goes back to save a horse. Save a horse, ride a cowboy. But he goes back to save a horse, and he gets bit. Now, that's never good. Because you already know, it's a dangerous world. The son goes out. The parents are going to blame Rick. They're going to blame Maggie. They're going to blame anybody. Hey, my son went out. He was young, and you didn't protect him. But that's where we also see Maggie have to put young Ken down. So that's a little bit of the setup. So it fills in a few blanks, and I'm going to rush through the last part of these spoilers because I did warn some people. Warning, we are talking about spoilers for the next couple minutes, and we're going to get into some predictions. So they have to go back, and Maggie has to talk to Tammy, Rose, and Earl, and she tells them what happens. And what's interesting about this is they have a funeral, and Alden, who we have circled, and once again, I know I do this every video, but if you guys haven't guessed this, these are the spoilers from Shiny Firefly. These are from Spoiling Dead's fan page. So these are not me on set. These are not things that I made up. These are things that have been provided. So Alden, who is circled, will sing. Who knew he could sing? Who knew Bradley Cooper could sing? So, similar. You guys should know. Star is Born's coming out next week. So, a little movie reference for everybody. But Alden will sing. And after he sings, Gregory is going to say, "Cheers, kid. Rest in peace." So now we see probably plot shift number 2. So plot shift number 1 was Ezekiel being in this chaotic moment and realizing he needs to propose. And number 2 is because this thing happened with Ken, now Gregory has his big idea. Not dead yet, Star Guitar Goddess, but he has an idea. So we skip forward, and we got to find out what's going on with all the other people that are out there. So it's the Sanctuary. The Sanctuary is in dire straits. They're having trouble with their food. And Daryl notices this thing written on the wall that says, we're still Negan, and he's pissed off about it. So Daryl's trying to lead, and he sees that people are kind of semi-revolting. He doesn't want to do it, so it's a half-hearted attempt. Saviors, save us, all of the above. Daryl wants to know who wrote it, tells Jim to write something above it so he doesn't have to look at it. But yeah, you're starting to see that the rift is going to happen. So Rick and crew is going to come up there. They're going to bring supplies, and that's where we get the bless you, Rick Grimes. And Daryl basically tells Rick he doesn't want to be leader. Carol overhear that. And Daryl doesn't want to go back to Alexandria. He wants to go check on Maggie. So then we get to Gregory. We go back to the hilltop. And this is where the whole Gregory thing plays out. Earl is a recovering alcoholic, so Gregory gets Earl drunk. And Gregory does have a stash of alcohol. And he gets him fired up, blames Maggie or Margaret for the death of your son. So, as we talked about when Maggie's out walking baby Herschel, Gregory just sort of says somebody's been messing with Glenn's grave. And that's where all hell's going to break loose. Earl will attack. Enid gets knocked out. Enid gets roughed up. Baby Herschel evidently falls, so almost some damage to him. And then Maggie will end up taking it up with Gregory and confront him about it. And Gregory's not comfortable that she's a leader. And where this is all going to go down is Rick and Michonne are sent for. They show up at Hilltop. They don't know what's going to go down with Gregory. Rick and Maggie talk. Rick gets a chance to see new little Herschel there, hang out with him a little bit. And you assume he's probably been there at least a couple times since Herschel's been born, but you would hope. But he invites Maggie to Alexandria because they really need to work things out and rebuild this fence. Or I'm sorry, not the fence. Rebuild the bridge. Maggie doesn't want any part of it. She doesn't want to help the Saviors in any way. And she shows she's really pissed off at Rick. And it's like, oh, I got something to show you. And all the kids are asleep. They go out, and this is where we get this scene. And this is where the death is going to take place after the all kids are put to bed, and we hang Gregory. So that's kind of what's going down, and Rick and Michonne are finding out the details, and they're not real happy about it. So hopefully that filled in a few of the gaps, at least from the spoilers. So that should give you the entire first week. I don't think there's going to be anything other, it's going to be shocking there. So let's get to some of the predictions that are out there. So we know we lose Ken in episode 1, and we lose Gregory as well. So I've asked some of the Patreons to give me some of their theories, and what I want to do is I want to talk about just some other people that we've heard rumored that could be leaving the show and how they're going to leave the show. And I'll go through one of the comments here. And this is Crystal Gore, as you guys know, in the streams. What's up, Crystal? On the Patreon site, she posted, she thinks it could be that Aaron and Jesus are out together, with Jesus teaching Aaron how to fight and showing him some of the moves. They are out and think they've come upon a small herd, whispers as well as walkers. They get to Jesus, and Aaron's trying to get to him, and Jesus screaming for him to just go. It could also be when Aaron's bit and loses his arm. So, pretty good theory there. Good thought. And Crystal Newfield thinks that I think Aaron and Ezekiel are going to be out when they get caught by whispers, and Jesus hears them, goes into ninja mode. So, they know what they have to do. Rosita cuts off Aaron's arm. So very similar. They think that there's going to be some interaction that's going to involve Jesus, because we know Jesus is rumored to be on the way out. I don't know the episode that Aaron loses his arm, but I thought it was in the second half. All right, so Michael Curie says hearing Rick back for season 10. Any comments? I have not heard that. Now, what I have heard is that Maggie could be back for season 10. So I'm going to give you the 5 people. So obviously Ken and Gregory are gone. So the 5 people that are the most in focus right now are Jesus, Jerry, Enid, Maggie, and Rick. Now, we've talked about Rick quite a bit. We go back and forth between whether there's a death possibility, whether it's going to be open-ended for Rick. We're going to end up discussing Rick probably more at some point. But we'll start with Maggie. So, and I know Lakeisha, who's listening on the way home, drive safely, Lakeisha. Be safe. I know you're listening in. She can't type, though. Is saying that maybe them announcing Maggie coming back is damage control. So it's being reported by several outlets. So I want to ask the 999 Army, I want to ask each of you right now. We're announcing it's Rick's final episodes, but why the announcement that it's very possible that Maggie could come back in the future? And I know how I feel about it, but I just want to know what your thoughts are. Why the public announcement? If it's going to be open-ended, and we're going to watch it be open-ended, do we really need to know that a month and a half in advance? I mean, we're 6 weeks out before it happens. Ratings? I mean, that's maybe to a degree. I mean, ratings is very broad. And Lakeisha used the word, which I think was a little better than ratings. Sorry if you guys use ratings. Damage control. So if by ratings you mean to buffer the ratings, to maintain ratings, because when I hear ratings, I think to get additional ratings. I don't know that announcing that is going to get additional ratings, but it could, plug a couple holes in the dam, right? That, okay, Rick's leaving, Maggie's leaving, why even bother? Why watch? And then they come back and say, no, hold on. We haven't decided all of that yet. Maggie could be coming back, but they are not budging an inch on the whole Rick scenario. And that is the scary part. I know we look for any clue that's out there, so when there's a small clue and we can say, oh, he's directing, it's probably open-ended. But then when you say, well, why are they talking about Maggie coming back, but they're just not even discussing this with Rick, and they're making it like a death sentence, it is scary. And I think that's the emotion to soften the blow. Louis Grimes, I get it, maybe to make it not as bad, but it ain't going to soften the blow because Maggie ain't Rick. Maggie's Maggie. Some people like the show for Maggie. Some people don't like her character. And same thing goes for Rick, but I would say Rick is clearly a much more popular character and been a centerpiece of the show since the very beginning. So you can't sell me on the show because you might bring Maggie back. You sell me on the show that you're going to bring Rick back. That would sell me on the show. And look, there's a money element to it at some point where everybody can't be the star of the show. But as we get into death predictions, I'm going to ask, I got to ask you guys, please, even if you're a wallflower sometimes and you don't typically answer, give me an answer to this one. If you're watching the playback, definitely chime in. Let me know your thoughts. Because, your thoughts on these topics are really important. With Rick and the possibility of him maybe coming back, or they continue to kill off big name characters. So here's the question I want to ask you. Is it time that The Walking Dead start to finish the story with the big characters? And what I mean by that is, okay, I get it. Lauren Cohan, she has a right to work another job. Rick has a right to go spend time with his family. But can we say that's enough? Enough killing the stars? That it doesn't make sense at this point that the badass people who have been badasses all along are going to die? Can we let some of the weak people die off? That's the question I have for you. Let's ride or die. Let's ride it out with what we have for another 3 or 4 seasons, and no more. Okay, that's what I wanted to see. That's what I want to hear, and I think that's the mood that people are really starting to get into. So, for Robert Kirkman, if he has 10 minutes and he can chime in, I'd love to interview him. I'd love to talk to him. But he could pop in and watch a little bit of our stream. He's not as involved in the show anymore. I'm sure he gives them a little bit of advice, creative content. Scott Gimple, Angela Kang, Gail Hurd. If you guys want to tune in, here's what our viewers think, and this is what the 999 Army feels right now. And we got a lot of people on our channel. So I would say 95% of our audience is saying, give us the story with what we got. The story doesn't need to be about killing another big name. It doesn't need to be about killing Jesus, or it doesn't need to be about killing Negan or Daryl or Rick or Maggie. Kill some of the people that, if we were all there and you know their character, they would definitely be the first to die. Eugene. I'm sorry. Eugene is resourceful. Eugene would have been dead a long time ago. I would argue, and I don't know if Pete D's here tonight, but hold on, I'll get to that in 1 second. So, Jimmy Jammin', what's up, JJ? Good to see you. Kills, definitely bringing back Rick is the only way. Oh, man, are they going to make me count? Okay, I'm counting. All right, I see what you did. I tried to do that with a little bit of Negan-esque in my voice. So, if we're going to, kill off these characters, and the hot topic has been Tara, I would argue, though I'm not a personal fan of Tara because of her story, but I would argue Tara can probably defend herself. So I'm okay with Tara being around. But Eugene, gone. Rosita, definitely stick around. So I want you to give me right now, if we were Walking Dead realistic, give me your first 3 that would probably die before everybody else. So let me see your 3. I'm going to leave it alone. I'm going to leave that comment alone. Hopefully it doesn't turn into a trend. So Jeremiah also says, Tara, Jesus, and Enid. I would argue no to Tara and Jesus. They can fight. Enid, Eugene, and Tara. You know what? I'm still. Judith, Eugene, and Enid. Okay. I mean, Judith is probably very well protected. I think there's enough adults to kind of keep her out of harm's way. So I'm not sure about Judith at this point. But Father G, okay, there you go. Father G, Eugene are 2 that I think would be on the radar. And you know what? Henry as well. Because Henry should have died before Carol went out there looking for him. I mean, Henry was surrounded. So we might want Henry to go into something, but all right, Judith is different because Judith always has a chaperone. But there's been a couple times that Henry roamed off on his own and he didn't die. Gregory as well, but Gregory, we know what's going to happen with him. So here's my 3. All right? Father G, Eugene, and Henry. Those to me are the 3 people that should be gone. Now, Sasha? No, but here's the problem. They had no choice. So I'm going to give the writers a little bit of a break. If we predict deaths and we go back and we talk about previous deaths, I can't complain about Sasha because occasionally, if a big character wants to leave, oh man, can I say this? I guess you can kill him if you want. So Sasha could definitely defend herself. Sasha could have been a survivor. But she chose to leave, so they're like, okay, we're not going to recast her, let's let her die. Now, the same could be said about Lauren, and the same could be said about Rick. But, do you guys see a trend here? The same could be said about Heath. All right, so hold on. Sasha was pretty convinced she's got a full-time gig, so they killed her off. Lauren and Corey almost was like they had jobs, but they could be part-time jobs. You see where I'm going? So you could see Heath's story open-ended and Maggie's story open-ended because they're leaving open the possibility for them to come back to work. So there's a real-life element and then a writing element. Which kind of brings us to Rick. It's like, what do you do with Rick? So even if they do kill off Rick, I'm not going to start a silly petition, but I'm going to say that's about it. Now, keep it open-ended. It's a win-win for everybody. That goes back to Lakeisha's comment she sent to me. Is Maggie, and the announcement of Maggie is definitely damage control, because I think the writers are feeling what we're feeling right now. You can't kill off any more big people. Enid is not a star on the show. Jerry is not a star on the show. They're not bad, but I think they're okay with their deaths. Jesus is not fully characterized. He's not fully developed for stardom. He could be, and this is what's really weird, is they could do so much more with his character, and they could definitely put him more in the spotlight, but they haven't done that as of yet. And it almost feels like they're going to kill Jesus before it gets to that point. I'm not disagreeing that Jerry's not funny. I'm just saying he's not the lead on the show. And if we had a choice and we had Maggie, Rick, Michonne, Daryl, Negan, Carol, Rosita. Well, let me ask this question. Not who has been there longer, but who's a bigger star on the show? Rosita or Jesus? I think most people are going to say Rosita. And if you don't say they're even, you can say they're even. All right. The majority, I'm not talking about the comic book, I'm talking about the TV show. I would agree that slightly Rosita, I would say they're close. I would say they're very close. As far as their story, what they're doing, how often you see them, and it's not who you like better. I think it's their airtime, their contribution to the show. And I think we saw both of them pretty equally last season. All right, I'm going to get back to my point in just a couple seconds because we got Age. What's up, Age? So he says, Andy signed on for 6 episodes. If he leaves and 5 is confirmed, you see him returning as a head on a spike in episode number 8. I don't think how long he signed on for has any relevance on his story. Andrea was signed on for much longer, and they ended her story. Dale was signed on for longer, and they ended her story. I think Rick leaves in 5. I think he could be back closing the storyline for Rick. Just because he signed for 6 or 8 or 12, to me, is totally irrelevant. I think if they wanted him to come back, all they got to do is break out a sheet of paper and sign him to a brand new contract and say, here's the deal. We're going to bring you on a cameo performance, and we're going to pay you a whole lot of money to do that. I think people make too much of the contracts because the contracts can always be... Now, there is a structure to this because of the unions that represent and the agencies that represent. There's a process to it, but there's workarounds to this as well, where they can work out deals to get people on board. I appreciate that question. It's come up a couple times, but I wouldn't I wouldn't use that as a basis of when do you think Rick's going to be there and what his storyline is going to be. I think that they've made their determination, but I really do think it's open-ended, and I think he's going to be putting some finishing touches. I've heard of that being done on other shows where they just didn't want everybody they wanted to keep it to a minimum of what goes down. And they could have written a possibility and said, look, this is going to be spoiled. It's going to be leaked. It's going to be out there. We're going to spoil some of it. We're going to make it easy on people. But the big thing is we're going to write it where there's 3 different scenarios of how this goes down. And then we're going to have it go down with just a small select group of people that know. So bring in 200 extras, film what they film, and then let everybody go home and leave it where it can be A, B, or C. And then when the dust dies down, bring Rick back and figure out which way you want to do it. That's the mystery that I think is going on right now. Because you don't... I don't sit up at night and miss Carl. I don't sit up at night and miss Sasha. They were good. They were good characters. I don't lose any sleep over Simon. I could have seen Negan dying and Simon taking over in a weird sort of way. Or I could have seen Simon dying and Negan returning to power. I mean, those are stories, and I'm going to follow that story. But it feels different with Rick. It would feel... There are probably 2 characters that I think would be disastrous to kill. And you know what? Let's throw it out there to the Army. Which 2 characters do you think that I'm thinking right now? If you pick 2 characters that you had to say were untouchable, which 2 characters would they be? And we're going to hit this one pretty easily. I don't say Carol, Sherry. I like Carol. It's Rick and Daryl. I think Daryl and Rick are the 2 untouchable characters. Now, do I think Carol is very important? Yes. Do I think Michonne is very important? Absolutely. But I think there's a bigger following, a bigger support group for Daryl and Rick than any other 2. And it's hard to envision the show without either one of them. I'm not gonna lie. I wouldn't be happy about Michonne leaving the show. There would be a loss. Carol, there'd be a loss. Maggie leaving, a little bit of a loss, but they sort of changed a little bit of her dynamic. But this is going to be real. We did a live stream last year when Sasha left. And it was a little bit emotional. I mean, there's people that like Sasha. We definitely did one with Carl, and people were angry. What was funny, Carl, it was angry because people didn't want Carl to die because they felt like he had just bought this house in Atlanta and outside of Atlanta, and he was wronged, and it kind of snuck up on him, and he didn't want to leave the show. And there's some truth to that. So there was a personal element, but after a few episodes, it wasn't... Yeah, Rick's still there. Daryl's still there. It's okay. Sasha, it was the selling point was, hey, she's got another show. She's doing well in real life. You know, we like her. Best of luck. Rick and Daryl's still there. So, if Rick dies, hey, you know what? Daryl and Carol's still there. No, it's not the same. Well, Michonne's still there. Yeah, but Michonne's there without Rick. It's not the same. And there's going to be a long-term effect. Every stream, I'm going to predict it for you right now. If Rick dies in 5, every live stream we do for the rest of the year, I should sue, and I'm saying this in jest, I should sue AMC for the trauma that I'm going to have to go through and all the angry people that I'm going to have to deal with that are going to be coming in these streams and dealing and spewing about Rick not being on the show anymore. Because it'll be an ongoing thing. And all you have to do is hopefully pick one of those three options we talked about and just leave it as a cliffhanger. Leave it as a cliffhanger. Please, AMC. I'm imploring you to not kill off this character. And, Brian Moore says, I can live without Daryl. The problem's going to be we so much live through those characters and what they do, and we forgive them very easily. Like, Daryl's done some stuff, but we've forgiven him. It is. Villar's like, the ink is dry. Yeah, but he is back in town. So I'm holding out for an alternate ending. But I would have liked to have heard that by now, too. I would have loved to hear somebody come out. But look, if there's only 3 or 4 people that know about it, Andy's not going to come out and say what it is. What's up, Jimmy? Thanks for popping in, man. What's up, Big Worm? He said you're playing with my emotions, Smokey. You should add a Smokey to the end of it. No, Michael, I don't see that ending happening. Exactly. It's final episodes, so they're definitely going to hype up the ratings as much as possible. They did make alternate endings for Abe and Glenn. We had heard that they shot a death scene for each person, but word got out. Script got out. No, I mean, I'm hearing you guys loud and clear. We're still going to assess the show. We're going to assess the storyline. But I just don't see many scenarios where I'm going to accept a storyline of Rick's death. And I will definitely call it out. I will definitely, put it to the test. And if they can write something out that feels good and works with the death, I'll be the first person to backtrack and admit it. If that episode is so good and they do it in an epic, nice way that we watch it and we're like, I didn't realize they had that up their sleeve. Then, okay. Then you'll get Showrunner of the Year award. All right, we got Aegis with the super chat. And Aegis says, Kills, do you think Andy leaving will alter Daryl's storyline at all? For the last 2 seasons, we've been pushed more to dislike him. So he could die, I guess. I think the original story idea was scrapped. I think that's a great question. And I'm going to ask the group to respond to that. I'm going to give you my response. But once again, if you guys are new, subscribe. Also, 999 Army, do me a favor. This is our mid-stream reminder. Everybody hit that like button. Show a lot of love for our group, for our team, for The Walking Dead, for everything that we do. And then we're going to answer this question. Because we do know that the writers have had the ability to adjust our emotions. They've done it with several characters. They did it with Morgan. They did it with Father G. They've done it with Michonne. They've done it with a little bit to Rick. But Daryl, they've left him vague, and he's just been... Daryl's a person that he beats, he marches to his own drum, right? So Daryl does what Daryl wants to do. And Daryl is always for the underdog. And I don't see Daryl leading. But I see Daryl, and we mentioned this in the stream a couple nights ago, and I saw this with a couple of the sneak peeks. Daryl will no longer be a mumble rapper. Daryl's going to be involved, resolute. He's going to enunciate properly. They're going to change his character to a small degree. It's not going to be based on leading. It's going to be about... before, Daryl could talk under his breath, and we didn't have to understand what the hell he was saying. We just liked Daryl. It was like... if you ever get a chance, there's this YouTube skit that was done. I don't usually promote other things, but it's really good, so I'll tell you about it. It's Batman interrogating the Joker, and Batman always talks under his breath. So don't do it during the middle of the stream, but after the stream, just check Batman interrogates the Joker, and the guy plays both parts. And he's like, Joker is I'm not going to reenact it. If you've seen it, you'll understand the humor. But the whole time, Batman is like, he's talking like that, and the Joker keeps smacking him to get him to talk, and he's like, enunciate your words. When I see Daryl, it always reminds me of that. Because sometimes I do have to go back and sort of pay attention to Daryl, but I don't care. Because Daryl always supports the underdog, and you like him. So there's going to have to be more to that, because the world has changed. The enemy has changed. And one thing about being a leader, you have to speak, and you have to be understood, and you have to... And I'm not saying Daryl's going to be the perfect leader, but he will need to be more of a leader without Rick there. And you will see his character transition. But you know what? You're seeing Maggie's character transition. You saw her go from sit back and observe to I'm putting my foot down, I'm going to do this right now. Whether you like it or don't like it, that's who Maggie is. You're going to see Negan change his character, where Negan was just pretty much, these are the rules, and this is the way it's going to happen. If you violate the rules, then there are rules, and more rules, and rules, and rules. And now I think you're going to get less and less. Negan's had 18 months to analyze his poor leadership and how it all fell apart. Now, whether power is going to be the underlying motive, or whether there's going to be a more pure motive of carrying on a legacy of Carl, carrying on a legacy of Rick, all of those things, Negan will change. And even Angela Kang has said it, Scott Gimple said it, they said, you will see a different side of him. The conversations with Rick are going to change Negan as well. I got a couple super chats I got to jump to really quickly. We got Commodore Crawfish says, why so serious? Hi, Steph. I'm Batman. I can just read it. I can't act it out. And thank you for that. And we got Ecom says, will a Daryl and Negan friendship ever form? No. Never. But I'm going to ask your question in a different way to the group. Ecom. This is the Super Chat Spotlight. Will a Daryl and Negan partnership ever occur? And I say emphatically yes. No friendship, but a partnership based on survival and need. because the next enemy is worse than your current enemy. They will absolutely have to fight together against the Whisperers. I don't see a scenario where they're not trying to write Negan into a protagonist role. And Commodore says, the chance of friendship left on easy street. And was Dwight. Negan is worse than Dwight. But, look, I would say only slightly. And we forgave Dwight, and Dwight shot Denise. Daryl saw it. Dwight played easy street for Daryl and fed him dog food sandwiches, and we saw it. Now, the argument has always been, well, he had to because of Sherry and because he didn't want to cross Negan. And he was worried about what was going to happen to Sherry. But he still did those things. And Daryl did not kill Dwight like he said he was going to do. And I don't think Daryl's going to kill Negan, but I do absolutely think that Maggie and Daryl will try to burn Negan in a cell with gasoline. I predicted that before, and I absolutely think that's what's going to happen. You see them out there carrying a can of gas, and I think they're going to take it right to Alexandria and try to burn it down. Or at least burn Negan down inside. They're going to pour it on the concrete. But I don't think they're going to succeed, and I do think that after the time skip, after 4 or 5 years, there's going to be... Now, okay, let me set it up. I'm going to set it up for everybody before we get to the last couple of death predictions. How many people here honestly think that Negan is going to die this season? That they're going to kill off Negan? This is the part where I trick everybody. You ask a couple obvious questions, and then after we get, exactly, impossible. So almost nobody. Question number 2. If you guys don't know me by now, question number 2 is, how many people think that Daryl is going to die this season? Nope. Not possible. All right. Last question, and then I'll get to the point here, so I don't drag this on too much. How many people think the Whisperers are going to be introduced this season? Okay, now, Negan ain't dying, Daryl ain't dying, Maggie's leaving, Rick's leaving, another enemy in front of you. Then those of you, I'm not trying to pick on you, but those of you that said Negan and Daryl won't coordinate and partner, give me a scenario where they won't. Because I'm struggling. Unless Negan is going to join the Whisperers, which I don't think is going to happen. That would be maybe the only thing you could push back. So if you got Negan, who's got this core group of people, and Rick's going to be gone and Maggie's going to be gone, they're going to be looking for leaders, and you got Daryl, then they're probably going to look at each other and say, I hate you, well, I hate you more, well, I don't care, look at these people over here, we need to fight them. I think they have to work together. They have no choice. Right, and, based on the comics, let's say some point Negan does pretend to join. He sees, now they're not going to do what they do in the comics. I mean, they're not going to be that explicit. Trust me, they won't. But when Negan observes things in the comics, and later on he decapitates Alpha and says, wait till Rick gets a look at this. Do you think that maybe he's going to do that and say, wait till Daryl gets a look at this? Because Daryl and Negan do have there's some hatred. Got to get me my Daryl back. Now, it's a stretch, I understand. And the reason it's a stretch is because many of you love Daryl, but you don't respect Daryl. You don't respect Daryl's ability, and you don't respect that Daryl can lead a group of people, and you don't see him becoming that next big thing. And granted, it's not an easy selling point. Because much like the writers, we're fans, we're critics, but we're slight critics. The writers make mistakes. And I'm not talking about just who lives and who dies. The writers make subtle mistakes. And to keep Daryl at kind of, very reclusive and to himself and introverted and all of those things for so long might have been a mistake. They're not perfect. Maybe they should have scaled it back a season earlier, 2 seasons earlier, or started to make it a little bit more believable, and that way it's just not all of a sudden. It's like shock. Same thing with Negan. Evil. Oh, he's kind of... he's looking out for Rick when he stabbed Spencer. That wasn't so bad. Oh, he wants Sasha to work for him, and, he's trying to recruit people, and, oh, he liked Carl. Okay, well, yeah, he did a 180. So these small dialogues with Rick, they're important because, one, we can understand him. Number two, we see that Daryl really appreciates the small core group of fighters. That it's not fun for him to look after this big group of people that can't take care of themselves. And I think there's, people, they haven't put their toe all the way in the water, but they got their bathing suit on with accepting Negan. And I think, they're going to test the water and then they're going to dive in. And Negan's alive, so that's the bathing suit analogy. We're going to hear the dialogue between Rick and Negan, and that's going to be testing the water. And if Negan either sacrifices or tries to give his life to save someone unsuccessfully, or if Rick gives him his life to save Negan, then you're diving in the pool. I mean, you're going to view Negan, and I am too. We're going to view Negan in a different light. Commodore Crawfish says, Andrew and Carl's death were subtle writer mistakes. So, here, I'll say this. I don't think Andrea's death was not a writer mistake. I think Andrea's death was a intervention because they knew that they wanted at some point they wanted Michonne to take her role. So, do I care that Andrea left? I mean, Andrea was not a big impact on me. I honestly, I didn't care. Other people might have. Carl was a result of a subtle writer mistake in my mind. Because I think that the situation, I think 2 things happened which directly led to Carl's death. I don't believe it was his age and his salary and the contract and all that. I mean, we can talk conspiracies. I think it was, one, the overly evil role that they put Negan in. And number 2, it was Andy letting them know that he was going to leave the show. I believe that. I believe that Andy gave them advance notice, and they didn't feel like the Carl storyline would develop, and they needed Carl as a pawn in order to end the war. And it was a cop-out to a degree. But, look, I'm not saying that I'm the exact authority on that, but I will say I feel passionate about that. But I think it was directly related to another mistake. And I'll give you a little bit of validation behind that. After the Carl death, a couple of streams later, I asked most of you, and many people said, oh, Chandler was not going to be able to lead the show. I mean, we like Carl, but no, I didn't see him in a leadership role. So what were you going to do? You're going to keep him just as a tag-along, just so you can watch the comic book story become the comic book story? I mean, look, I'm not angry about that, but I don't hate it. I don't hate the decision, but I respect people that don't like it, that don't agree with it. But I wasn't in love with Carl's character either. I mean, I'm okay with it. I would like for it to be a little bit different, but sometimes you have to make some of these rough choices. I mean, how would we have done it differently? Just turn the show over to Carl at this point? All right, we'll jump back on that a little bit because I do want to tie in the Negan storyline. Jimmy's Jammin' says, if Rick is gone and Maggie's gone, I think Daryl will have to try to find out what Negan, or if Negan would help. And might have to duke it out first, though. Jimmy, I could see that. I could see that the bitterness is not over with Negan and Daryl. I don't know that Negan is going to say, hey, you know what, I deserve it, go ahead and punch me a few times. But I think there's going to be something that is going to reshape him. My only fear to that is if it's not done the right way, we may or may not accept it. It's a tough write. It's definitely a tough situation for the writers to be in. So Crawfish says that depends on the writers to make Carl the leader. So let me ask this, Crawfish, because I think it's a valid point, and I would definitely get the feedback. Do you, in this audience watching this stream, and those of you watching the playback, because many people aren't comfortable with Daryl being a leader, how many people would be comfortable with Rick dying and Chandler being the leader of the group, the leader of the show? I personally would not. I think it's going to be as good as Jeffrey Dean Morgan is. I think it's going to be hard for him, for Ross, for Norman, and for the character who plays Magna. I think it's going to be tough for them. So, Crawfish, I would say this is a small sampling, but the writers had to feel that as well. I mean, there certainly is, we're not even talking the same league, the same ballpark, the same city. If we were to compare Rick's view, how people view Rick as a leader, and how people view Chandler and Chandler's role as Carl. So with that being said, if you weren't going to Rick Grimes, I mean, do you have something to contribute to this chat? Because if you're just here to talk about the moderators or something, just participate. I mean, we can address that after the stream, but I don't think being in the middle of the stream, and it's like a sidebar with several people wanting to talk about The Walking Dead, but it's probably not the forum. Just saying. I mean, it's a pretty passionate group about what we talk about. Sorry. Let me get back on track here. So, with Chandler and Rick and that storyline playing out, if they knew Rick was going to leave, how else do you do it? I mean, I'm trying to sort of think. I'm trying to think through. I don't like the way Carl died. I mean, that wasn't real epic, and shooting himself and not turning. I mean, we could debate some of that, and we certainly have in past streams. But if Andy's going to leave and the war is not going to be ended the way you want it to end, and you got to come up with a story of how to make everybody accept it, it's not great, but I guess it worked, because here we are. And there's some pretty passionate, like Chandler could never lead the show. We're struggling to find anybody that can, right? I mean, isn't that kind of what this is about? Like, it's going to be by committee. Well, yeah, Michonne's going to do a little bit. Aaron's going to do a little bit. And Negan's going to do a little bit. But you still have the challenges of writing acceptable stories for them in order to get them to that point before Andy leaves the show. And Joanne Green says leaders is the answer. And I do. I think it is going to be more of a committee approach. And you're not going to have just that one person. But here's a question I have for all of you. If you have multiple leaders, what's the one thing that you have to have between those leaders? So if you got Aaron and Daryl and Negan and Michonne, and we'll say Magna will go into that. I agree, Joanne. I think trust. A common purpose, definitely. And I could add both those. But I think trust. The challenge is not to get us to trust Negan. It's to get it to be believable where Daryl can trust Negan. To get it where Michonne can trust Negan. No, I'm going to disagree. I'm going to disagree with and I know a lot of good viewers here saying respect. Because if you're out on the battlefield, and this is not to call it anybody in particular, but if me and you are side by side and we're fighting, and a bunch of people are coming at us, and I need you to watch my back, I'm not going to turn around and say, I respect you so much. I need to trust that you're going to do what we need you to do, and you need to trust that I'm going to do what we need to do. Respect can be a byproduct of that trust, but it is trust. And if Daryl can get to a point, and this is what we have to think about, at what point can Michonne trust Negan? At what point can Daryl trust Negan? Because if they're going to be out there, the only way Negan's going to earn that trust is by proof, by going to battle, by them being able to turn their back and him not sticking a knife in their back, or by Rick making it known. I believe he's changed. I not respect, because I don't think they're ever going to respect Negan. But Negan's going to have to demonstrate something that shows trust. And if they don't do it, we will never buy in that this storyline goes forward. You're absolutely right, Lisa, and I think Rick has been wrong before, but here's why he's not wrong this time. And I think this is great because it goes full circle. Because Rick is not pushing his own cause. He's pushing Carl's legacy and Carl's cause. And whether Carl's cause was right or wrong, Rick's trying to honor his dead son. And that was what the writers were getting at with killing Carl. And whether you liked it or you didn't like it, it was meant to have this continuing effect on Carl. And this is why I said I think they killed Carl because, look, you know what? I'll just take off the gloves. Chandler, I think you lost your job because Andy left the show. And you weren't going to be the leader. And I feel like if Andy would have stayed on, that Carl-Rick storyline would have developed further. I know that's a real warped way to look at it, but that's the way I look at it. I'm sorry. Not blaming him, but I'm just saying that Andy said, hey, I got to leave, and the next thing you know, they got to change the story. So the fact that that's the central focus is rebuilding and regrouping and building something that Carl wanted to happen. And Commodore, I know that's in complete sarcasm, that prison has a 100% success rehabilitation rate. But in seriousness with that, we know it doesn't. But that's why I said that we've got the bathing suit on, and it's going to be time to dip our toes in the water. And that's going to be the psychotherapy that Negan goes through with Rick. It's going to be the conversations with Rick. It's going to be that change and that feeling out process. But it's not going to happen full scale until Negan does an act of absolute sacrifice, or somebody believes in him so much that they're going to sacrifice for him. But I do think there are going to be some Negan challenges in this transition. Aegis says, how do you think Negan escapes his cell? I don't think he's going to escape. I think someone's going to unlock it, and he's going to do whatever he wants to do and come back whenever he wants to. I think he's going to build that trust slowly. Or I think Daryl and Maggie are going to try to burn him out, and somebody's going to have to rescue him. I just don't, and Drama King, this is where we'll probably disagree. And I could be completely wrong on this. You could be right. But I just have this visual of how I see this playing out, and I don't think it's a savior that lets him out. I think it's a very slippery slope for them to even hint that Negan is not 100% converting, that he's still fighting it. I don't think they have enough time to do that. I think they got 5 episodes, and in 5 episodes, they better convert him to a saint and make the audience believe it and understand it, and somebody sacrifice for him, because if you don't do it before Rick is gone, you're going to miss the opportunity to do it. So I think it is going to be about understanding Negan, about building trust, and leave the cage unlocked. And then maybe he even says, hey, Rick, I could have broke out a long time ago. The door's open. You know, something that shows that he's not going to run, that he's not going to sneak up in the night and kill people, that he's not recruiting. I do, and as I said, I think it's going to be a challenge. Because I feel like that's the way they have to write it, but I also feel like not all of us are going to accept it. So Amanda Goss wants to know, do you think he will truly change? I think he will truly change between now and the Whisperer War. If Rick comes back in season 11, all bets are off. Because that would be like the ultimate roller coaster, wouldn't it? Negan's power, Negan's fall from power, and a Rick return, and a Negan quest for power. You know, I could buy into that later on. Not for 2 seasons. If you're going to make me accept Negan, then you better do it for a short period of time. But, you know, could he change again? Anything's possible. And wouldn't it be the ultimate in irony if Rick leaves the show via capture or something, Negan rises to power, Rick spared Negan, which allowed all this to happen, Negan helps the group, Negan ultimately rises to power again, and Rick comes back and kills him because not today, not tomorrow, but I'm going to kill you. I mean, you know, then he would be keeping his promise. But we're so far away for any conspiracy theories in that regard to happen. I think the main conspiracy theory right now is, why did Rick come back? To learn to be a director this season when he could have done it any time. I think there's some unfinished business, and I would think that gives us just enough hope. And that is where we are going to leave it. So we're an hour and 12 minutes. Wow, time flies by. But good news, we will be back here tomorrow night at 9:30. We will be talking more Walking Dead. We're going to be hyping up Fear the Walking Dead. In case you haven't seen all the news, Fear the Walking Dead, they said, is not going to be your typical cliffhanger. It is going to really set the direction. We're going to find out about Althea, where she's been the last couple episodes after she left the hospital. So we're going to add some fear chat into it as well, and I think it's going to I think it's going to be fun dialogue. We'll talk half The Walking Dead tomorrow and a little bit of Fear. So I want to thank everybody for being here. Once again, you guys all do me a favor. Everybody hit the like button. If you're having a good time here, if you like what we do, then just show a little bit of love, a little bit of support. If you're watching the playback, this is the closing credits. Do want to shout out all the Patreons up in the top left corner. Thank you for everything that you guys do. You guys are absolutely amazing, and hopefully you enjoyed the little snapshot of Morris Grimes that's posted up there. Also, special thank you to all the sponsors. You guys are amazing. My moderators, Emmy, Steph, Tommy, and Kel, they just do good work all the time. They make it a blast, and they do a real good job of checking out the chat that probably should not always be included in the chat. And just a shout out to all the 999 Army. Love hanging out with you guys every night, and thanks for making the conversation interesting and exciting. And give me a quick 999. Let me do a few shout outs before we close this thing down. So I want to say what's up to Freeland, also to Zombie Fury, Fluff Salisbury, Sheila, Clark 007, Chris Riddle, Commodore OU Crawfish, Samantha Coombs, Cammy, One Conscious, Sheila Mack, what's going on? Kel, I already gave Kel. Well, I'll do it again. Kel, Steph, Tommy, and Emmy. A double shout out. Randy Miller, Paul Eagle, Ida Roma, Valar, Cody Mazza, The Walking Dead Nerd, Dawn of the Frank, Stefanella, R. Wilson, One-Eyed Carl, Melinda Kettler, Pauline Griffith, thank you. Anna Crew says, you're awesome. That's a lot of exclamation points, Anna. So you definitely get points for the extra exclamation points. Giovanni, thank you. Daddy Corleone, appreciate you being here. Michael Curie, have a good night. Bumblebee Brown. Emma Michalik, where's All my hearts, Emma. Emma just like with a regular 999, I'm used to seeing like 4 rows of hearts. See, I'm spoiled and that's okay. Maybe next time. Zelda Faz, what's going on? Jimmy Coonan, the Gaming Squad, Mike Reiser, Crystal the Singer Chick Gore, have a good night. Thank you, Crystal. Thanks so much, Sheila. I appreciate that. You have a good night as well. Jimmy's Jammin'. And I didn't shout out all my super chatters as well. Let me give them a special shout out really quick too while some of you guys are typing. Because we've got several. Valar, thank you so much. Jimmy's Jammin'. Age, thank you. Commodore, OU Crawfish, Ecom, and then Amanda Goss, and then a couple people with super chats. Commodore with multiple super chats. Age, Jimmy's Jammin'. Thanks all of you. Appreciate everything that you guys do. You guys are absolutely incredible, and your support is much appreciated. Thank you. Tommy V, have a good night. Isola, have a good night. Evelina White, thank you. Newfeld 12, thank you. Yeah, mods are awesome. Lieutenant Ripley, have a good night. I won't forget you tonight. Star Guitar Goddess, thank you. Deborah Johnson, thank you as well. You guys don't forget, tomorrow night, 9:30. Oz Ackman, thank you. R. Wilson. So, R. Wilson, your streams are going to be my therapy if Rick dies, so thank you. My streams are going to be my therapy, so hanging out with you guys will definitely be part of the therapy as well. We'll be figuring it out as we go. Kentrell, thank you. Julie, I'm not going to do outtakes tonight. Normally we'll hang out, but since this is an hour and 17 minutes so far, we'll add a little bit extra dialogue tomorrow night. Sam B, thank you. I just want to do a few extra shout-outs because I know last night I missed a whole lot of people. Gee74. Ron Burgundy Moore, thank you. Sherry Wenzel. Mika Sheehan, thank you. First-time listener. Appreciate you being here. Hopefully you'll come back. Love all the interaction, and we want to get as many ideas and concepts in our chats as possible. So if you guys are first-time listeners, make sure you subscribe so you get the notifications. And you can also hang out with us on our Facebook page as well. Madison Dickey, have a good night. I see Commodore super chatting again. Good night, my dead family. And a lot of love to the mods. No doubt about it, man. Well said, well said. BK, thank you so much. Wow, that's some high praise there. Greatest YouTube cast ever. I'm liking that. Hopefully it was not just entertaining, but we just like something that's inclusive. I mean, to me, those are the best ones where people just really get involved and have a lot of good, strong opinions. And we're going to close it down there. So thank you so much, Logan5. I missed you in a shout-out, and I do. I miss people every night. Cruz Mom, I see a few people that I didn't call out earlier. When this video goes live, just leave it in the comments. And also, remember, people are going to be watching the playback commenting on your comment. So comment to their comment. So we just create this whole cycle and a whole bunch of dialogue. And there's Lakeisha sneaking in under the radar. So just missed it. But I know you were listening on the way home. So thanks, everybody. I'll see you tomorrow night, 9:30. Peace.